So when it comes to the update, which is update 985, an editorial by Mr. Messier titled "The New Sodom" makes an interesting observation. I'd like to just pinpoint that one. He explains that Sodom, even though it was warned, they didn't listen, and it says the whole city was completely destroyed by fire and brimstone from heaven. He goes on to say that the United States and other English-speaking nations have not reached the point yet of all, except for the very elect, being corrupted and perverted, but they are working on it. As a consequence, they will have fire and brimstone leveled on them via nuclear weapons from heaven. I said it was an interesting parallel, interesting comparison. And of course, we have a job to do today. We have to keep warning the people that this is going to happen. And hopefully some will listen, some will repent. That's the hope. But no matter how many there will be, we have to preach the gospel as a witness, and with it comes the warning message so that Jesus Christ can return to make an end to this madness which we are encountering in this world today. The Q&A asks the question, was Jesus Christ the God of the Old Testament? And even though we have known for a long time that this is so, there have been those recently who question that. And I would encourage you to read the entire Q&A, because at the end we are giving you some remarkable quotes from Mr. Armstrong's book, Mystery of the Ages. I believe quotes which have long been forgotten by many. And he explains what it actually means that the world is cut off from God, from whom in particular. So please read that Q&A, because it will make clear, I believe, that Jesus Christ was in fact the God of the Old Testament and why that is so. We have a new Standing Watch program titled Killing Sabbath-Keeping Aliens. And if you just hear the title, you may wonder, what is Mr. Link talking about? But it goes into a new movie titled The Tomorrow War. And this movie has some interesting references to Sabbath-keeping aliens. And if you think in terms of what the Bible prophesies, that Jesus Christ will return, that he will enforce the Sabbath, and that people will think he is the Antichrist, because don't we all know that the Sabbath was replaced by Sunday? So they say. So there are interesting parallels, interesting concepts in this movie for God's people to understand. Some of the things I'm going to say may be difficult to listen to, specifically if you have a preconceived idea insofar as certain aspects are concerned. But I know when I made some of the comments more than a year ago, people didn't like it, and some even left the Church of the Eternal God because they didn't like what I said. And what I said then was absolutely true, and it's even more true today, if you think that's even possible. But before I go into that, and of course I'm talking about the coronavirus restrictions and measures and lockdowns and masks and social distancing and passport vaccinations and so on, I'd like to quickly talk about two other important events in the world, one being the situation in Israel. Now in our update we talk about the fact that Iran attacked Israeli tankers, or a tanker in particular, and it looks pretty obvious that it was Iran. And Israel has responded and said, we are going to do everything we need to do, including going to war against Iran if that is necessary. Iran, of course, came back saying, oh, well, you do that and we are going to respond in kind. On top of it, we have an article in here to the effect that right after Lebanon's ruling party, Hezbollah, attacked Israel with missiles on Wednesday, US President Joe Biden said that Washington will pledge close to $100 million in additional humanitarian aid to Lebanon. Should be noted that Lebanon is currently controlled by the Hezbollah terror organization. The Biden administration didn't specify how the new funding would be spent, but Biden did say that it was in addition to $560 million in humanitarian aid earmarked for Lebanon for over the past 2 years. Now, you've got to be naive to think that that money is just going to be used for humanitarian purposes. You've got to be naive because you just know that it's going to be used for military purposes, and especially for military purposes directed against Israel. So really, what we are saying is that the United States is supporting Hezbollah against Israel. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And then we have another development. We didn't talk about this in this particular update, but we did talk about it in previous updates. And that is, of course, Afghanistan. Now, the UK warned today, actually, its citizens of the situation in Afghanistan, and they said, leave Afghanistan immediately. They said there's a high threat of kidnapping throughout the country. The Taliban is making great inroads. They have again now, for the last 2 days, captured 2 more provincial capitals. They have already captured some before. We are quoting General Nick Carter, the head of the British Armed Forces, said that the country is in danger of state collapse. And Afghan President Ashraf Ghani criticized Washington's withdrawal strategy. The reason for our current situation is that the decision was taken abruptly, he told Parliament, adding he had warned the Biden administration the withdrawal could have consequences. Of course, when this was all announced, first by President Trump and then later by President Biden, it was predictable, it was clear. This country would end up in chaos, in confusion, in violence. We're not taking any position as to what should be done. All we are saying is that it's another example of America's failed politics, going into Afghanistan and now coming out of Afghanistan. So these are the 2 examples I wanted to point out. There's more, of course, going on in the world. But I do like the time right now to take the time to talk about the most current developments regarding the COVID-19 situation. We have published quite a few articles in our updates this time. I just want to give you a few headlines. Fear-mongering in the United Kingdom. There was actually a tremendously insightful article by the Mail on Sunday. Then fear-mongering and autocratic measures in Australia. And if you don't know the situation in Australia, and of course I also get input from our minister there, it's horrible what's happening in Australia. Complete lockdown again when it comes to Sydney and other places over there. Another article, very insightful, I thought, was by the Ron Paul Liberty Report, Living in Darkness. The following is stated: when the ideas of liberty dominate, humanity flourishes. When the ideas of tyranny and authoritarianism dominate, humanity suffers. Back and forth, the pendulum seems to swing, from light to dark, and then dark to light. We live in dark times. And then he says at the end, civilization itself is being challenged in ways that it has never been challenged before. I mean, we could have said that. Here, this author says it, and he is absolutely, completely correct. We are living in utmost dark times in a way, I believe, that probably in that regard has never happened before. And again, we shouldn't be surprised by that because we are in the last days, in the end time. Satan knows it. He has great wrath because he knows that his time is short. The Washington Post, not necessarily a conservative magazine or paper, wrote an article about the fact that people will resist when the Biden administration is going to continue their fear-mongering tactics. And the New York Times, another left liberal outlet, said the same. prompting Mr. Biden to attack both of them and saying they should stop reporting negatively about what he is doing, telling the press, even the left liberal press, to shut up. Well, it's interesting, he also spoke this week about the coronavirus measures he claims are so successful. And he said that more than 100% Americans have been vaccinated. More than 100%. So, I mean, you have to feel sorry for him, frankly. I mean, you laugh about it, but you have to feel sorry. I mean, the man is obviously not capable of running the country. We know he is not running the country. We know that somebody else is, but we don't know who. You know, some have already speculated, and Germany has been publishing some articles, that because he is not capable, he should be asked to resign, or they may ask him to resign. But you see, they're not going to do that. Why not? Because if he were to step down, Kamala Harris would take over. And she, believe it or not, is even less popular than President Biden. And if she steps down for whatever reason, then Nancy Pelosi would step in. So again, nobody likes that. So Mr. Biden will stay, at least for a while, until it becomes obvious he cannot at all function properly any longer. Based on that now, we find out more and more this concept like you have to be vaccinated. You have to be vaccinated. And so we have several articles in here questioning whether fully vaccinated people are even protected. And it's MSN, another left liberal paper, asks that question. And LifeSite News asks the question, do vaccines make the COVID disease more dangerous? Now, these are kind of articles you don't hear too much about, and that's the reason why we publish them. Because we feel that this needs to be explained. I will talk in a short while about what it all means for us. At this point, we are just saying these articles are being published by us because you don't necessarily find them published anywhere else. And you do want to have a balanced and objective viewpoint. Another article goes into the question how Mr. Biden and his administration can justify the concept that people are going from door to door to encourage people to get vaccinated. Isn't that unconstitutional? Isn't that illegal? The article explains, well, you know, you have no duty whatsoever to talk to anybody, no matter who it is, who is knocking at your door and asking you whether you have been vaccinated or not. You say very politely, sorry, I'm busy, and close the door in front of the person's face. That would be one way to approach it. Of course, you can expect, in all this hysteria, those who are not vaccinated are being blamed. The unvaccinated are being blamed for the spread of the virus now. And so some have compared this with the situation in Nazi Germany, and the vaccination passport, which is being talked about, has been compared with the yellow star the Jews had to wear to identify them. We have an article by GTA, Jewish paper, saying that the chairman of the Oklahoma Republican Party is the latest Republican figure to liken coronavirus restrictions to the Nazi period. And then he brings up that Star of David. But you know what? He was strongly condemned for his statements by Oklahoma's top Republicans and the Oklahoma City Jewish Federation. So you can't even say that and don't get accused by your friends in your own party. By the way, this comparison has been made in Germany quite a bit now. That's not the first one who has been saying this. And of course, we are hearing more and more about there are going to be limitations for those who are not vaccinated. They're talking about they cannot go to pubs any longer, to stores, forget theaters, forget shows, unless they can prove that they have been vaccinated. The Associated Press wrote on August 5 that the Biden administration is taking the first steps toward requiring nearly all foreign visitors to the United States to be vaccinated. So you want to arrive in the United States from another country, you have to prove that you have been vaccinated. That is what the Biden administration is trying to do. They also are trying to make it mandatory for all active duty forces in the US military to get vaccinated. Now, many in the military are completely and totally opposed to vaccination, so what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? And so Dr. Rand Paul, who is also a senator, and we published that article on August 4, he said you got to resist. Well, of course, he goes into some examples as to how to resist. Well, how do you resist? You can't resort to violence, obviously. How do you resist to a government which is definitely becoming more autocratic and dictatorial? Now, we have also a few other articles I'd like to quickly refer to before I talk a bit more about the coronavirus dilemma. But in Germany, a court has decided that Facebook illegally removed posts. And the court said, you can't do that. You can't do that, you mustn't do that, you must explain as to why you're doing it. You got to inform the people why they are allegedly offended, why they have offended their agenda. But, I don't think Facebook cares. A member was just right now banned. She posted an article by a doctor on Facebook questioning how successful those vaccines are. And she was banned, the article was removed, and she was told, this is supporting wrong and disseminating wrong information. That's it. So if you don't agree with the left-wing socialist concept of Facebook, you are being deleted, banned. If worse comes to worse, like in case of President Trump, deleted for life or banned for life, or at least for several years. And then the final article we have is an article about privacy. And it points out that privacy is a fiction. You think you have the right of privacy, and you think you are private. And then the article points out that to most who use smartphones, your privacy is gone. Completely, utterly, totally gone. So be aware of what you are putting on your smartphones. But I'd like to make a few more comments about the coronavirus restrictions. This morning, I wanted to watch some news on TV after I had been working on a Q&A, and so I wanted to get away from the computer a little bit and just sat in front of the TV, try to find some news. So I went to Fox News, I went to Newsmax, I went to some of the local news. It was all a bunch of garbage. Every single one was just blabbering people and total waste of time. So I thought, okay, well, let's see what CNN has to offer. So I went on CNN, and sure enough, there was a young lady, and she had contracted coronavirus. She had obtained vaccination. She was pregnant. And so, according to the report, she almost died. Her baby was saved. Baby tested negative, actually. And so now she is trying, and of course CNN is promoting it, that pregnant women in particular should be vaccinated. It's funny because just this morning I received an article, which is going to be in the next update, which says exactly the opposite. And this is by former Pfizer Vice President Dr. Michael Yeadon. And according to the article, he highlighted 3 reasons why women of childbearing years and younger should not, I emphasize not, receive the vaccines. And so then he is explaining in the article as to why that is. And he felt it's very dangerous for specifically pregnant women to be vaccinated. Another article by another doctor will also be published in our next update. I wonder how long we can do this before they come down hard on us. That article, according to the doctor, states that coordinated government, media, big tech collusion is being dishonest about the actual effectiveness of the COVID jab in order to drive people to receive it. The doctor lamented the fact that relatively few doctors are standing up to the suppression of medical information, and that even those doctors are being silenced. When asked why she believes censorship and suppression of medical information is occurring, she said, "There are three things that tend to motivate decisions like this: money, power, and control." And she explains it. And of course, money. The industry is heavily involved in this, making a lot of money with these vaccines. Power, control. Governments want to stay in power. They want to control the people. Absolutely correct. I was just reading that they have, I don't know how many vaccines, worth thousands, if not millions of dollars. And since they are reaching the point where they're no longer, quote unquote, effective because they only have a certain lifespan, what do they do with that? So they're trying, first of all, to influence the people, get vaccinated, because we have to get rid of those vaccines. And then what they're doing, because they have been accused that they are only looking at their own country and not others, we are shipping them over there to Africa, and they can use them over there. Vaccines which might no longer be good, vaccines which might actually be hurtful. I very vividly remember when all of this started, and you will remember it, that I said the whole thing has to do with making people more and more submissive to government, submissive to restrictions, submissive to governmental authority, dictatorship. And how true has that been? But I also remember that originally we were told, don't wear a mask. Then we were told, wear a mask. No, wear 2 masks. No, wear 3 masks. Then we were told, but if you are vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Now we are told, well, even if you are vaccinated, you should wear a mask, indoor and outdoor. I was also told very clearly at the very beginning, people who are older, like me, people who have a weak immune system, people who have allergies, like me, and children should not get vaccinated. That was clearly stated. Now it's the opposite. Now we're being told, especially the older people, especially children, should get vaccinated. Now either the scientists have no clue what they're talking about, which is probably true, but it also has a lot to do with suppression, direction, governmental control. They are working all in cahoots together. We know that. The Biden administration admitted they are working together with Facebook to suppress those who state different opinions. That's clearly admitted by them. That's where we are right now. Now, having said all of this, I'd like to make a cautionary remark, because all of that could be heavily and strongly misunderstood. The church is taking no position as to whether you want to get vaccinated or not. It is your personal decision, and it got to be your personal decision. And your circumstances might be completely different from the circumstances of your neighbor next door. You have to make that decision. So we are not publishing articles to dissuade you or to persuade you in one way or another, but what we are doing is we are publishing articles to give you an objective viewpoint, because you don't normally hear this on the mass media. On the mass media, you hear one position, which is questioned by others, but you don't hear the questioning, and if people are questioning them, pretty soon they're being suppressed. We are publishing articles also to show you where it's all going. World dictatorship is coming. We have been saying this for years. It's going to be a complete, utter, total world dictatorship. And we are seeing this more and more now developing, again showing you how quickly things can happen and how close we are to the return of Jesus Christ. And we also are telling you very clearly that your liberties and your freedoms, no matter what your position is towards vaccinations, wearing masks, social distancing, what have you, your freedoms are being curtailed, are being taken away from you. That is very clearly to be seen. So again, let me just emphasize one more time. It's got to be your decision what you are going to do. And the church is not going to condemn you either or. It's your decision what you need to do. And there are circumstances where people in the church have already received vaccinations. There are circumstances where people in the church have said, no, we're not going to have the vaccinations, at least not now. And again, it's got to be their decision and their decision alone. But I want you to realize the fact that we are living in really dark times, in dangerous times, in times where the civilization as we know it is being questioned, is being destroyed, especially by so-called civilized countries. They become more and more dictatorships in a way which we haven't seen since World War II. And it's going to get worse, not better.